Hey everybody, this is Brad from Johnson Small Engines, better known as the one-hand mechanic. If I can do it, you can too. Today we are working on a Honda HS520 Snow Thrower, and it came in because it won't start. And the customer said, oh, this thing started every year. And I said, did you use it last year? And he said, no. And he goes, but Brad, I've used it every other year and it starts up and runs fine. Well, that little bit of gas that's in that carburetor definitely goes bad. And I would highly suggest anybody out there that can get Aspen 4, you can leave this in your machine. It's 92 octane, no ethanol, and it has the stabilizers in it that this thing, I've had one of these bottles on the shelf for 5 years now, and it's still perfectly fine. So whatever they did to this fuel to make it, it's just a more pure form of fuel, I think, and also some additives for the stabilization. No ethanol, 92 octane. You can leave this in your machine. You just run your machine every, so many months and you're fine. But anyway, we're gonna go ahead and try to fire this thing up. Now, it's really hard to get into these carburetors to actually spray any kind of fuel down in here. So I'm gonna try to fire it up, show you guys that it does not run. And as far as starting, just make sure, put the switch on. Fuel valve must be in line, which it is. And the easy one that a lot of people forget is make sure you have fuel in it. Gas cap's coming apart here. But there is a full tank of gas, and that gas does not smell very good. So we're gonna have to flush that out. Pull the choke out. Now there is two ways to start this. You can do it with a pull cord right here, or you can plug a extension cord in here, and that's your electric starter. And you do need about a 10 to 15 foot extension cord. I would not suggest going any further than that because it'll drop the amperage to the starter and you can burn up your starter. Let's give it a shot on. Everything's good. All right, this is not starting, so we're gonna go ahead and open this up right now. Okay, from left to right on tools, I always use my 1/4" electric ratchet. Here's a 1/4" ratchet. You guys can use whatever you have. 3/8 also work, but everything I'm using today is 1/4". Phillips head that I actually got from an impact driver and I put it into a socket. It works great for me, but it isn't a number 3 Phillips head will work great for the inside of the chute. 10mm wrenches, 2 of them. This one here is a ratcheting head. It helped out a lot getting the gas tank off. Just a regular 10mm wrench, a deep 10mm, shallow 10mm, 13/16 spark plug socket. BPR5ES is the spark plug that is used for the HS520. You have my clip removal tool that I use on many different things. It's a great tool to have in your tools, and I will put it in the link in the description below. You can buy one. It's just a pair of pliers, needle nose pliers, the Sure Tack spray that helps up with the just getting the gasket to stick somewhere. It helps out a lot in these cases. That was kind of, it's tricky for me to put in the gaskets plus the carburetor at the same time. So the Sure Tack helps keep the gaskets in place. Silicone spray, you don't have to buy anything expensive. Cheapest silicone spray you can find, that's sprayed on the inside of the augers, outside of the chute, everywhere that you don't want snow to stick, which is inside the augers. So that pretty much wraps it up for the tools. So let's get to it. Okay, so we're gonna have to get this off. I tried one time taking the bottom off, but you can't because of this bar that's in the way. So we're gonna go ahead and take this off first. Now you could, if you really wanted to, I guess if it doesn't want to start and you're out there, we're gonna go ahead and try to confirm that this actually does run. So it's a 13/16 socket to put on a spark plug. And you can use a spark plug socket or a deep socket will work. You could try a new spark plug to start. I'm gonna go ahead and just, we're gonna spray a little bit of fuel inside that spark plug hole. All right, so I have enough in there that it should run on that. Then you put your spark plug back in. Okay, we're gonna try to choke out again. Ignition on, fuel's on. Let's see if it'll fire. Oh, I heard it that time. Probably need a little more fuel. I'm gonna try this one more time with a little bit more fuel. I don't like to use too much. Okay, we have ignition on, fuel's on. We're gonna leave the choke off because I did put a good amount of fuel in there. Okay, so there you have it. it does run and then it stops, and that means that we did have gas. It's a carburetor, guaranteed 100%. Okay, we're gonna start by taking off the bolts around the top. And you do have to pay attention to the size of the bolts in the shoulder. All right, Honda makes a really nice bolt, and they put a shoulder on it so it will not actually hurt the plastic. Okay, these have a nut on the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and put the socket on there and a wrench on top. And while we're here, we do have to take this off. So now these are a little tricky for me. The 10mm on this side, and then there's a Phillips right here. So what I do is I have a pretty heavy duty Phillips head. I put it into a socket. This is actually out of a impact driver set, and it just grabs the Phillips on the inside real well. And then what I do is I'll crack this loose so it gives me a little bit of play. And I'll show you right here. It's just a big Phillips. If you use the wrong size Phillips head, you can strip them, so be careful. Okay, so we do have to take off this rubber gasket here. And a lot of times these rubber gaskets are deteriorated and you have to buy a new one. This one isn't, oh, this one is kind of cracked. It helps keep the snow from getting below. I'm going to leave this on for now until we get the rest of the bolts out. Now this should come up, but we do have this right here, and sometimes they stick. Don't forget to take the gas cap off. All right, get that off out of the way. I'm gonna put my gas cap back on. I'm gonna keep dirt from getting in here. Okay, so here's the carburetor, and we need to get this carburetor off. So we need to take off the bottom piece right here, and we have 10mm there. And when I say 10mm, I mean it's a 10mm socket. Now, what I was saying earlier about the shoulders on these bolts, the lower black part, which is that, takes a very thin shoulder bolt, and the bigger ones go on top, so just keep that in mind. There's only two of these that have the small shoulders. Now, as far as getting this out of here, but all you have to do is, it's nice that they put the choke is actually in a rubber piece. This rubber, you can just slide it out, and that choke will get out of the way. And then we have ignition switch wires right here, and right here. So this is a little plastic fastener right here that I'm just gonna take off with this is my fastener tool. I love this thing. I'll put a link in the description below. And you have plug right here. Let's pull these apart like so. You can't mess that up when you put them back together again because one's female and one's male. Then you'll be able to pull this out, and that comes right out of the way. Now, but like I was saying, it's real hard to get into this carburetor to spray anything through the carburetor while it's together. So going through the spark plug hole was much easier to find out that obviously we have a carburetor issue. Now we can take this off of the carburetor. And actually, this won't even move. This is the throttle right here. This should move. This is the governor. Oh my gosh. That's pretty bad gum inside that carburetor. So this carburetor is basically, trying to rebuild that carburetor is going to be non-existent. We're just going to go ahead and replace it. But let's get it apart first. Now these bolts do not have shoulders on them. Just keep them separate with the carburetor stuff. And these two bolts here actually will take this bracket off, which in turn has the fuel line on it, which means that there's going to be a fuel line back here that we have to take off. I'm going to turn the fuel off, like so, and it does have off right here. So you can see that you're actually in the off position. Okay, so these are bolts. So the whole carburetor is actually going to fall down once I take these out. So what I'm going to do now, Okay, so from above the carburetor, here's the fuel line, and we got to get that off. And Honda makes really, they're good little teeny fuel line clamps, but man, they're a pain to get off sometimes. Right there, you can see it. If you use a pair of pliers, I'm going to use my clip tool, and I'm going to push it. I've showed you guys many times in my videos where it's great for taking the fuel lines off. Well, I'm going to try to push that off out of the way a little bit like that, and then I'm going to take a pair of pliers, twist this out, twist it. You have to kind of push it in and twist it, and then it'll open itself up. It's kind of hard to explain that, but when you push them in and then you twist it, they'll actually open up. Now there's probably going to be a little bit of fuel coming out, but not much. And I try not to mess up these fuel lines. Honda makes really nice fuel lines, and they usually last a very long time. If your fuel lines are cracked, you're going to have to, I would highly suggest getting them through Honda. I mean, these fuel lines are just really nice fuel lines, and are made very well. Take the rest away. Pull the one bolt out, the other bolt out. Now I'm going to tap, whoa, it just fell off. Okay, I thought that was going to be stuck there. So basically this is your front piece of your carb, and you can see right here the fuel that actually sat here and got gummy. Oh, look at this, is so bad. The gentleman says it ran 2 years ago. I doubt it. I really doubt it. Okay, so when you take the carburetor off, probably should have taken this off. I didn't see there's a this is the governor spring. It's an anti-surge spring. When it's running correctly and you don't have a carburetor problem, it should not surge. I'm going to put the bolt back in the carburetor, just one side, so I can get a pair of pliers to take that off. I'm going to go ahead and try not to bend it. Actually, it'd probably be easier to take this off. Okay, so I took it off to make it easier to get to this, and it just pops right out of there. And then it's just a 90 degrees, so you're going to turn this 90 degrees. And we do have underneath the fuel right here, we have, this is just you can drain the fuel bowl. All right. I'm holding this right here. If this would have fell out, sometimes you're not going to know how it went in. So try to keep that just sitting like so. Now, this plate has 2 gaskets on it that we're going to replace. And you just pop that off like that. And it has 1 gasket on the inside and 1 gasket on the outside. This also has a gasket behind it. I usually don't have any problems with this. If you need to, if this came off with it, get the gasket for the back. So here's the carburetor. And you can see on the inside where it's just gunked up. So we're just going to replace this. Okay, so here's the carburetor, and I don't like to give part numbers because everybody asks me for them, and the reason why I don't is because there are a lot of different serial number breaks for different machines. Right here is the number that you're going to need. It's on the sticker on the back of the machine. This is an HS520 ASA, and the important number is the serial number right here, the SZBQ6045193. You need all those numbers to get the correct part because they do change out the numbers a lot. For this particular machine, the part number for this carburetor through Honda is 16100 ZL8HO2. And then the other parts that I have here is the outside gasket. Right here is a part number. You guys can just pause the video if you want that one for this gasket. And then there's 2 of these gaskets that I showed you that I'm going to replace. And then if you need the other one, you're going to have to look that one up. Carburetors are not that expensive. It's just, and also this guy here was so bad, there's just no way we're gonna clean that out. And then, in fact, I'll take this off just to show you guys how bad it really is. But let's get this carburetor out. And I always make sure, I've had new carburetors not be exactly the same. And that's why it's so important that you use your model number and always double check to make sure it looks identical. Everything looks as it should be. Okay, brand new carburetor. Let's go ahead and take this bottom off and see how bad this really is. If you want to rebuild these, you can just take them apart. Find yourself an ultrasonic cleaner is the best way to go. A lot of people use carb cleaner and just spray it out. If you have high compressed air, make sure to even getting the carb kits for these things. I don't even know if they have carb kits, but you have to individually order the parts. This is pretty bad shape. In fact, I can't even move the pin here to take out the float. This is jammed in there. It's basically just all gummed up. For the price of these, buy a new one. It's just that simple. Hopefully you guys do this before you need a snowblower, and if you have to, you can always try to clean these out. But this is how to, remove and install the carburetor. Lock that in. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take this gas tank off just to turn it upside down. It's easier to flush it that way. Okay. All right, so just going to take this over to the bench. So I use glass containers to check to make sure there's no water in the bottom, because that's a sign that somebody's gas can might be stored outside. And you can collect moisture anywhere where there's a lot of high moisture place. You can collect moisture in your gas can. So you got to be careful where you put your gas cans. Make sure there's no junk in the bottom of your tank here. It looks good to me. And yeah, so that gas is old. Doesn't even smell like gasoline anymore. It's starting to smell like turpentine. So that's why it was so gummed up. Now I'm going to show you what the Aspen 4 looks like when we put it in. Aspen 4 I've been using for many, many years now, and I highly suggest it. It's a little bit pricey, but for snow blowers, it's definitely worth using. This is what Aspen 4, I wish you could smell it. It doesn't smell like gasoline either. It's a very sweet smelling, but that's what Aspen 4 is. Clear, I call it moonshine, but that's Aspen 4. That's what's going to go in this guy's tank. We're going to go ahead and put this in here, and then we're going to flush the line when we get it back together again. Let's go put it back on the machine. And the way it goes on right here is you have a little indent on the tank, and it just sits into a rubber grommet. And there are shoulders on these bolts, so you know when you're done, but they get pretty stiff. Now, to flush it, we're just going to open up the fuel. We're going to let it flow out here. I'm going to use a clear container to see what comes out. And it has the Aspen 4 in there. Okay, now we have to scrape this off and get the gaskets off both sides. And if you just have the carburetor and you don't have new gaskets, a lot of times these gaskets will work as long as they're not broken, as long as they're not cracked or sliced open. And then I always double check to make sure that the gaskets are going on the right way. And sometimes I'll use a spray tack to keep these to stick on. I think I'll probably do that. So you're like, okay, which way does the carburetor go back on? Just remember, fuel line goes to the fuel side like that. Okay, so we have to put the plate on, and you have to remember which way the plate goes. Pretty sure it was like this. Now, it's still going to be tricky for me because you have to hold, since it's bolted and there's no studs. Okay, the studs aren't there. You got to put everything together at once, and we have this gasket here. It goes here. All right, and that's pretty straightforward lining up. I'm going to go ahead and put one bolt through. Try putting a second bolt in here. They don't make this easy. Go ahead, the gasket's on there. I'm just going to leave it sit like that. Make sure you put the carburetor on the correct way. Just make sure that the fuel outlet is near the fuel line. You know you're on the right way. I'm going to leave that fuel line off for now. Push these guys in. The tube here for the extra, you can release the fuel out of the carburetor bowl. That goes down behind this governor spring right here. You just have to make sure that this fuel line goes behind this governor spring, and then it'll sit down on the side of the motor like that. And then I'm going to come over to my plate, which is sitting there. I'm going to try to get the studs through the plate, And I just dropped one of my, didn't let it dry, didn't let it tack up enough. Go ahead and put this gasket, I'm gonna put them on the studs. I didn't let it sit up long enough because I wanted to try to get this video done for you guys. And we're gonna put the plate back down in there. Always make sure that the gasket's on, the one that's in the back. I'm gonna put the plate back down here. And just see how it is, there's a little L bracket right there that's going towards the fins, and then a little teeny bent piece that's going that way. So you'll know you have it in the right way. We do need to get the throttle linkage connected. So I'm going to go ahead and try to do that now. Right there. Had it. There it is. Bring this back up. There may be easier way of doing it, guys, but it's a little tricky. Definitely that tack sealer helper, the tack spray really does help if you can let it set up. And then you can have the gasket stuck to the pieces already. Now I have it screwed in. I'm going to go ahead and tighten that up. Try to tighten them evenly. Now the throttle works nice and easy. It'll be easier to put it on, open up. Actually, you're closing the throttle right there. These engines only run at full speed. There is no low speed on these. So when you start them up, they go right to fast speed. That's why they're spring loaded like this. There is no idle. Just make sure everything looks good there. Gonna go ahead and put the choke 90 degrees in. And I'm not gonna put it in the bracket yet because we have to get the outside cover on. The plate on here. And this is I'm pretty sure this is an anti-spark plate. A backfire plate. They must have had problems. I remember back in the day, we used to have problems with backfiring. We're gonna go ahead over here and we're gonna put the fuel line in. We already flushed the fuel line. Okay, there you go. I'm going to go ahead and turn the fuel on, and I think we got enough to run this thing in here. And put a little more moonshine in here. Just kidding, it's Aspen 4. Now I'm going to go ahead and run this before I put it back together again, just to make sure it runs. I'm only going to run it for a short amount of time because we have the doors down right now. So basically, choke out. Make sure you check your oil, which is here. Okay, you always want to make sure you check your oil when you run these things. And I did check this before we ran on it. This guy's here's oil is pretty clean. Hasn't run this much at all. But here's also the drain plug for your oil, 10 millimeter. They can be pretty tough to get out, but they make it easy. You put a drain pan right here, and you can drain it pretty easy. Just tip it back. Choke out. Make sure you're okay. We don't have the switch on, so if I won't be able to stop it. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on because I want to be able to shut it down. I'm inside the garage. I wouldn't care if I was outside. Like I said, you can't mess this up. It's plug and play. Make sure it's turned on, fuel's on. We're just going to set this in here for now. The fuel line goes on top right here. And there we go. That's off, that's on. On, give it a pull. And there you have it. Now I'm also going to replace the spark plug. This is the spark plug here. It's a BPR 5ES. Always check the gap. I usually set them between 28 and 30 thousandths. Okay, this is a BPR 5ES but it definitely has been in there a while. Much easier to replace a spark plug when the housing's off also. A lot of people say put dielectric grease on the end of your spark plug when you put it in there. I tend not to. I feel for the click, and I want to make sure that, I mean, as long as it's not rusty, you're fine, and I want to make sure it stays on. I don't want that any chance. The dielectric grease is very slippery. It's like a silicone-based grease, and it does help in the electricity, but I don't want these things popping off. I mean, to get in here to do this, you know, you're doing a job for a customer, you want to make sure it doesn't go out popping off, and that can happen. The fuel line here does sit above this right here. So when I was putting it on, just make sure that this fuel line, they give you extra protection here so it vibrates on here. We're gonna go ahead and put this back together. Remember, the short guy goes down below with the short shoulder, I should say. And I normally don't tighten everything up until I get, you have to get the shoulders lined up in the plastic. Gotta take your gas cap off. This can be a little challenging sometimes if they're not pliable. It is good to have these to keep the snow from going into the body, and that's when rust will start on everything. You definitely just want to do this hand tight before you tighten them all up, because they can be tricky with the shoulders. When I put this on, I usually do the center first. It's always good to put a silicone spray in and around your chute area, like this. And it also keeps the snow off. Shoot it around your, put it all in your augers. Okay, so let's go ahead and fire it up one last time just to make sure everything's good. Turn it on, choke on, the fuel's on. Okay, so that's pretty much it for how to remove and install a carburetor on a Honda HS520. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe, share my channel with your friends, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.